It can be pretty dark. I'm really excited that my friend Terry Schilling has agreed to join. Before he comes on, I just wanted to read a passage from a book that I think sums things up pretty well, The Queering of the American Child. This is the introduction. American education is in the grip of a religious cult. What started in the 90s as a small group of abnormal, weird, and deviant disciples has since ballooned into a tremendous political force in our schools. This cult preaches the new religion of sex, gender, and sexuality, and they use school policy and teaching practices to brainwash children into their poisonous doctrine. This cult has long known that classrooms are fertile recruiting grounds with soft, vulnerable targets. Today, children across America find themselves under the spell of queer theory. And it's a great book. And that what was said in that introduction absolutely just nails it. This is a religious cult. We are fighting this present darkness, and we have to continue to fight, and no one better to fight with than my friend Terry. Hi.
Hey, Scarlett. Thanks so much for having me. Gosh, couldn't get my words out. I'm so excited to be here.
Thanks for being on. Today you were at the White House, so I was like trolling you a little bit on your X account. So you were at the White House today. Why don't you tell people a little bit about your organization and who you are, and then we'll just start talking.
Yeah, well, thanks again so much for having me. It's American Principles Project, and we brand ourselves as Big Family. Essentially, we invest in campaigns and elections. First and foremost, we primarily invest in national elections, but we work to protect parental rights and the innocence of children. We were the first political action committee in the country to run campaign ads on women's sports and attacking Democrats on that. So we believe in the power of politics to change things, and we think that politics in a lot of ways is a driving force in culture. A lot of people think that politics is downstream of culture, and we find that that's sometimes the case, but most of the times politics is upstream. When you change the law, you can change your society, and President Trump has really led by that. So we're on the front lines at the national level, running campaign ads to elect good pro-family politicians and unelect the bad guys, and then we work with groups like you to make sure the doors are getting knocked and the messages are getting out and the laws are getting changed.
Yep. So when you first said that you want to run commercials talking about what's happening in women's sports, what did people say to you?
They laughed. They didn't get it, right? They thought it was crazy. First of all, anytime you talk about women's sports, at least, 6 years ago, because that was when we ran the first ads, is 2019 in the Kentucky governor's race, they thought, this is crazy. People don't even really follow girls' sports. But what we knew was that wasn't true, that there's a lot of dads out there and definitely a lot of moms out there who had their daughters in sports, and they had invested almost as much as their kids into making sure their daughters had these opportunities. And so we just put our nose to the grindstone and kept pushing, and eventually it all came through. And President Trump was he was the hero, right? I mean, along with all the moms and dads out there that have been fighting, but President Trump was really the first politician to really go above and beyond what we were asking for.
So he was the first politician to really run like a national campaign and talk about these issues. And it's hard for me to believe, like 6 years ago, 2019, I didn't even know this stuff was happening really in 2019. And there's a representative in Wisconsin who early on, Barb Dietrich, she tried to introduce some bills in Wisconsin to save women's sports. And she said everyone laughed at her when she first started out, like in 2020. And she couldn't get anyone to sign on. And then fast forward, that every Republican, every GOP, we were all there testifying. So what a difference these years make. But when grassroots activists finally get that message out, it makes a huge difference. And I was part of Team Trump here in Wisconsin. And so when I was on the bus going through Wisconsin, I was the only woman, the only mom, and first, so everyone that I was with was great. Cash Patel's there talking about security, and a bunch. We had a whole bunch of great people talking about certain issues, and I would kind of come on and I'd talk about, this is what's happening in our schools. This is the curriculum, and this is what's happening with boys and girls locker rooms, boys and girls sports, and you audible gasps and just the incredulous. And when I would say at the end, vote for Trump because we're going to make America normal again, and we're going to get the boys out of women's sports. Are you with me? And the cheers deafening. It didn't take long before every one of the speakers was like, I'm talking about this too, hey, and they had that tagline too, because it would be the biggest cheers, the biggest grumbling when people were made aware of what was happening. So the polling came out in Wisconsin too and showed that it was one of the top issues that motivated people to vote, motivated parents to vote. And like your organization, we worked hard to do phone calls and door knocking and awareness campaigns, and just to let people know, hey, this election's important. One candidate is going to support and protect your daughter, and another one isn't.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and you remember in the early days, this stuff was so crazy. We sounded crazy.
Yes.
Right. It was so bad and so harmful. Like putting boys and girls sports, the initial response from the LGBT movement, the human rights campaign, was this isn't happening. Right. They were gaslighting us. And it was a really effective argument until America started seeing these boys who claim to be women winning championships. And Leah Thomas, William Thomas, the guy from Penn, ended up winning that women's championship and displacing Riley Gaines. That brought so much attention to it. But in the early days, in giving kids sex changes, my goodness, no one believed that was happening until all the reports that are coming out about little girls getting mastectomies and the rise of puberty blockers. But yeah, I did an interview today with a high-profile newspaper, and they asked how this came to be, and they basically suggested that the transgender movement, the transgender industry, really, that what their real key to success will be is if they can get Americans more familiar with transgender Americans. And the problem with that is Americans have become more familiar with this agenda. We're rejecting it. The more you put this stuff in our faces, the more we see it, the more we see victims. And I'm not just talking about the children that go through this or the girls that have to compete with these boys in sports or have their privacy stolen. I'm talking about the transgender individuals themselves. Yes. Right? We see these hurt and harmed people that are obviously miserable and they're in pain, they're suffering, they don't admit it, but we know, we see it, and we want to protect those people too. So it's amazing how far this movement's come.
Yeah, there are two different groups. If you go to testify in your state, for me in Madison, on any legislation that's going to protect children, protect women's sports, to ban the puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, the gender-affirming surgeries on minors, if you testify in anything like that in your home state, even in Iowa, I mean, I'm sure you saw what happened in Iowa when very conservative state, when they changed their state constitution to remove gender identity as a classification for under discrimination laws. I mean, the clown cars came out, the buses, the activists come in from all over your state, from other states, and you're sitting there and there's hundreds of people, and you will see some true believers. You'll see parents of so-called trans kids, mainly women. And for the most part, this year when I testified, it was almost predominantly white, middle-aged women who were in education. They were counselors, they were school psychologists, they were teachers, and they were bringing their ambiguous looking children along with them. You will see what I would say more of the predators, the very one shaved with bald hair and a purple ponytail and, just kind of a little bit creepy. And then you see the victims, and that those are the people that even kids were testifying, and they were troubled. Everything that they said in their testimony only validated my beliefs, because they would talk about self-harm, mental distress, that they had tried, there were attempts on their life, that they were depressed, unhappy, and suddenly they realized, oh, I'm trans. And then voila, like now everything's going to be better, and you have to let me have these puberty blockers because this is the only way I'm going to be happy. Or I need to be affirmed, and this is my only path to happiness. And these did not look like happy children or happy young adults. They looked my heart went out to them. You can't be unkind when you see all of these people in distress. And I'm only more convinced that what we're doing is right. And it's a real tragedy that we have schools affirming them, and it's a criminal that we have a medical system that is perpetuating this lie and causing damage that can never be undone.
Well, and they're making tons of money off of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what makes it really criminal is the transgender industry. We did a whole report on this. We found some of the largest hospitals, went into their financials, found the codes that they use. We found how much these surgeries cost, like to fully transition, to attempt to fully transition from male to female. It's around $450,000. To attempt to transition from female to male, it's over $600,000, right? There's a gender gap there, which is interesting.
Wow.
But these people it's a $4.5 billion industry. Right? So you have to ask yourself, well, what are they doing with the profits from that? And that's the hospitals. That's just the hospitals doing the surgeries and the anesthesiologists and the big pharmaceutical companies from the drugs. So you have to ask yourself, where's all that money going? Well, it's going into PR campaigns. It's going into government lobbying to make counseling illegal for transgender kids or kids that have gender dysphoria. They passed these laws called conversion therapy bans. And what they ban is for young children who have gender confusion to sit down with a professional and to feel comfortable in their own body. They've deemed it harmful to do a gender conversion therapy, whatever that means, to make a child feel comfortable in their own body. That's illegal because that's harmful. But then it's not harmful, apparently, to give them chemical castration drugs that we've deemed too cruel to give to sex offenders.
Yes.
It's totally insane. It's totally upside down. And it's only like that because of the money, right? Yeah. And also, I think this is a spiritual battle in a lot of ways. Yes. But it's so terrible. But we are fighting the good fight, right? I'm not going to die with any regrets standing to defend these people. They need help. They really do. And it's just so manipulative, Scarlett, that they tell these people, they tell these parents, they tell these kids, you have to affirm the gender identity, the new gender identity. Otherwise, they'll harm themselves. They'll commit suicide. It's not true. Number one, we found that out with several studies that have been coming out. There's no benefit to doing this, but it's so manipulative, and it's all just to make money. It's so terrible.
Yeah, and it starts like with what we're talking about with comprehensive sexuality education. What they've realized is that they wait too long. If they allow them to go through what normal puberty, and a lot of times they'll say, we don't want kids to go through the wrong puberty. So if they allow kids to go through normal puberty, then they think it's too late. And then what their hope is to basically, if they get these kids really young, then they give them the puberty blockers and the cross-sex hormones and the surgeries, that they're not going to have any of the issues with passing. But the big problem is kids don't know what they want. Kids can't consent to this stuff. And the kids are being indoctrinated really young. I mean, really young, like 2-3 years old. They're reading these crazy books like I have the ABCs of Gender Identity and Me and My Gender Dysphoria Monster and the Prince and the Frog, Rainbow Village. Sylvia and Marcia start a revolution. I mean, these are colorful looking books, cartoonish characters, but storylines that are radical. They're engineered to basically mobilize kids to political action and to start to think and question their identity based on things like, if I'm a boy and I like pink or I like to cook, or if I'm a girl and I like cars. And it's just insane. Like, that you're reverting back to these sexual stereotypes, which I thought we were supposed to get away from. But I also, you were recently, so a lot of great things have been happening with you. And first I had this image, you were on Timcast with Tim Pool. If you don't know who Tim Pool is, like he's got millions of followers. He's his own, like kind of his own network now. Right. And I, for years, had been watching his show, his different shows on YouTube. And so, and Timcast is just huge, especially like Generation Zers and all that. So what was that like? What was that like?
Well, Scarlett, I've been on his show a bunch. I've gotten to really know him a bit over the years, at least his style and what he's interested in. I love going on Tim Pool's show. I like talking with you for the same reason, because I always learn something when I go on his show. I'm exposed to different arguments, different ideas, different information than I typically get. And I get the same thing whenever I'm with moms, especially Moms for Liberty. I always learn new things, especially about the new books that these guys are pushing in. But Tim he's an interesting guy because he comes at things totally unconventionally. He didn't start off, as a cradle conservative. He kind of started off actually in the whole Occupy Wall Street movement, and he was against corruption at the highest levels of our financial system. And as he's learned more and more and more, he's become a Trump fan and a more conservative American. He's a really fascinating guy, super interesting. I would recommend everyone that's tuning in now to start watching his show. It's live, it's free, and he has some of those interesting. And he's almost like a more conservative version of Joe Rogan, because no topic's off limits. He talks about a lot of different things, and he has a lot of interesting people on his show. But it's fantastic. I recommend everyone do it.
Yeah, he does. He has a lot of interesting people, and they have a lot very different perspectives. From libertarian, like former Democrats, like you said, they started off with kind of Occupy Wall Street. They just, they're kind of, some of his friends anti-government. I've actually hung out with one of my friends, Sean Frashek, works for Tim Pool, and so I've last year and a couple of years I would go to some of their events, and I'd get to hang out with these guys. And there's a lot that are in the Maha movement, and they were really early on involved, and they're very much against they're kind of anti like CIA and wars. And there was a time where I was more, being a Republican, as Terry, my dad, a Marine, I'm a former Navy wife. I'm proudly support the military, but I think I didn't realize some things were changing, and with the kind of the swamp, and that the military in some ways had been captured by some interests that I now find abhorrent, and I'm so glad with President Trump that there are big changes being made in the military. With my family, I have a huge history of military service, and I'm really glad that the military is being restored to being ready to fight, but the goal is the goal is to not go to war. Although we're ready to, we don't want to.
No, that's right. President Trump has brought sanity back to the military. And, Charlotte, I will say, I think that Barack Obama did a lot of damage to the military. I think he elevated a lot of people as generals that really never should have been there. There was a real shift. And don't forget, Democrats have typically always at least talked a good game about peace and being against war, but they've really only opposed war when it suited them politically. When it comes down to reality, Obama, first of all, Obama was known as the deporter in chief. He had more deportations than even Trump has had. But that was fine. That was acceptable in the mainstream media. And then don't forget, he was the first American president to order a drone strike on an American citizen and children. Right, the Democratic Party was changed greatly by Barack Obama. If it was ever even, anti-war, I think it was always pro-war as long as it suited them.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton showed us that.
Yeah.
But yeah, President Trump's cleaning up things. We're getting, there was a moment in the first term that President Trump had where I realized just how great of a president he was. Essentially, Iran had shot down one of our drones. And the Hawks were in his ear trying to get him to do a strike, a bombing in Iran. Well, last minute, President Trump canceled it. And they asked him why. And he said, well, I didn't really think it was fair that we kill people because Iran shot down a robot, right? That's what a drone is. It's a robot. It's flying. I just didn't think that was equal. You can't kill people because they shot down a robot. That was when I realized this is actually a very thoughtful man. He's very smart. He's very wise, and he's just. Like he wants to do good things, and he's also strong. He wasn't going to let a bunch of hawks talk him into an unnecessary provocation that could get us closer to war and get more Americans killed.
Yeah, and I think in relation to Moms for Liberty, what has been happening in DoD schools was really shocking to me. That even the DEI had permeated the military and education. And when you are deployed overseas, if you don't know, if you haven't been raised in the military, like you'll often go to schools that are on base. And if you're in a foreign country, you're going to go to a school that's on base. And even those schools had been radicalized. And so it was shocking to me that was happening. Many of members of Moms for Liberty, we have our children proudly serving in the military or our spouses. And what happened over COVID and the DEI just became a bridge too far. And so the most patriotic families, the families that support traditional values, the types of families that will raise generations, like in my family, generations of my great-grandfather, grandfather, my dad, my brothers all served in the military. Well, suddenly they're like, no, the military's woke. I don't want to serve. So I'm really grateful for what President Trump is doing in the military, because, I think it's part of making America great again. And
no, definitely. Oh, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. And I wanted to show another that here you are with Tucker Carlson.
Oh, my gosh. He is the most fascinating guy ever, by the way. And I'll tell you a little bit about our conversation. So we're doing APP's doing our second documentary we've ever done. It's called Fathers Wanted. And it's about how the next generation of Americans is shirking marriage and fatherhood. 40% of Gen Zers say that they'll probably never get married. 43% say that they'll never have children, that they don't want children. It's totally crazy. And so we're going around talking to high profile people. Tucker agreed to do it because he really cares about fatherhood and America, obviously. But I'll tell you that I can't wait to share the sit down with him, because you never know what he's going to say. He talks to some of the most interesting and knowledgeable people, the most honest people as well, I'll say. And he retains a lot of it. And he shared it. He's a very well-read person. But one of the things that came out in my sitting down with him was that he really contemplates his own moral failings. Right. He's very comfortable admitting that he's not a perfect person. He's comfortable knowing that he needs help, that he's flawed. And I think it's just so refreshing to have someone who is practicing self-improvement instead of self-love. Right. You hear all the time in the culture that we need to practice self-love. Well, I mean, yeah, you need to have some self-esteem. You need to know that you're not a horrific person and that you are loved by God. But at the end of the day, we all need to improve ourselves. Life is a
Mhm.
constant battle of doing better and overcoming our moral failings. We all do bad stuff. We all have bad habits. And he's so comfortable admitting that. And it just brings out a level of candor that you don't really hear from people very much. And so I'm a huge Tucker fan. I agree with him on the vast majority of things. I'm sure there are some things that we don't agree on, but I think he looks at things in a very fresh and candid way that you really don't hear from very many voices these days.
And so cause looking again through your X account, I saw that you were on his show in 2020 talking about culture war issues, what's happening in schools, what's happening in sports, what's happening with curriculum. So when was the first time you were on his show when he was on Fox News?
I went on his Fox show a couple times, but the last time that I went on, he said something in the interview that made me want to get him for this documentary. We were talking about Delaware in 2020, and basically Delaware had just passed a law that banned insurance providers from including details in the explanation of benefits to parents if their child got an abortion, if their child had a gender transition, right, or got on puberty blockers. And what was happening in Delaware was, a lot of people don't realize this, but the schools in Delaware, a lot of them have opened up clinics where they can actually give drugs to kids. It's totally crazy. So essentially they were, President Trump on the campaign trail, he was talking about how these schools will train your kid and then they won't even tell the parents. Well, that was what was happening in 2020. This isn't a new thing. And the media, obviously gaslit us. But Tucker was perplexed by this, and he wanted to have me on a talk. But he said this thing. He goes, Terry, why are they doing this? I mean, we get it. You hate your father, but why are they doing this? And what I love about Tucker is he does these little drive-by attacks, I love it. It's a great tactic. But that whole, we get it. You hate your father, but why are you doing that? And that really stuck with me because I think a lot of the problems that America's suffering from is bad parenting, right? Absent fathers that even if they're in the home, they're not present with their children. They're not spending enough time with their children, not talking to their children enough. They're not serving as an example of going to church and praying. And I will just say, I take that role very seriously in my household. My children, we pray together. They see me get before God and worship him, a higher authority, a higher being than me. It shows my children humility, that there's things bigger than ourselves, right? And I think that's so important for fathers to and there's actually a ton of studies that show that, if the father's not religious or practicing religion, but the mother is, only 17% of those kids stay in church, right? Wow. But if the father's active and engaged, it's like 99%. So fathers got to get engaged with their kids. And so that's why I want to sit down with Tucker, is talk to him about his experience with fatherhood and his experience with his dad, which he had a phenomenal father. There's some stories out there that he's written about. He was a wild man, totally libertarian in how he raised them, but he was fun and he was ordered. And I don't know, you'll have to read more about it in his books.
He sounds like he is, he's been to Wisconsin a couple of times. I was able to meet him and he spoke at some events, and the way that he talks about fatherhood and the way that he talks about his father, but the way he talks about his kids and his wife and the love that he has for them is very endearing. And it seems very real to me, and you having to have these intimate conversations and feel that way is great. And what you've just said, because we're an organization, Moms Really, we talk often about parental rights, and we're fighting endlessly for parental rights, but there's also parental responsibilities. Yeah. And we have responsibilities to our children. And, so those things go hand in hand. And we talk a lot about the moms and the moms fighting back at the school boards. Obviously, I'm in an organization of 130,000 members, and the vast majority are women. I couldn't do what I'm doing without my husband's support, and he's always very supportive. But I'm glad to hear that you are reaching out in sort of almost a ministry to men and to talk about fatherhoods and dads, because I think there's been a war on men, a war against boys, a war against fatherhood, and we are losing something, and this is not a good thing for women. Women need. I have 4 daughters. Okay, I have 4 daughters, and I want them to find. One is married, and I'm happy about that. But I want them to find, mates, men that will be good husbands and fathers, and that will take care of them, but also will also allow themselves to be vulnerable while also being strong.
Yes.
And you need both.
Yes, you do. You need, and I will tell you this, you can't be a great father without being a good husband, right? Those things go hand in hand. And your duty, your responsibility is to your wife first. And I've seen this happen before, where when the parents aren't strong together, the children can actually divide those parents against each other. And it's really tragic. But yeah, you've got, the other thing is dads have to set a role model. They have to be a role model. They have to set an example for their sons on how to treat their wives, and also for their daughters on how they ought to be treated by a man.
Yes.
Right. And so we Tucker and I kind of talked about this. I have a longtime friend, an old friend, who used to get a lot of action. And I asked him, like, is this fulfilling? And we had this long conversation about it. I also asked him, like, what's your trick? Like, you have to have a trick of some sort. And what he told me was so disturbing. He said that he will ask the girl what her father does for a living, or some type of question about her dad. And if he picked up on any reticence to talk about her dad, or like a flinch, or like, I'm not going to talk about my dad, I don't get along with my father, he knew it was like a 90% shot that he would get them home that night. And I'll never forget, I went right home. I hugged my daughters. I told them how much they meant to me, how much I love them. Never been closer to them since that moment, but it was a real eye-opening situation for me. And look, I don't want to put all the onus on dads, although I like to, talk to dads about that, because I'm one of them, and I can do that. But I think a lot of people have mommy issues too. They had absent or distant moms, not involved mothers, neglectful mothers, or even like jealous mothers. There's a lot of issues, but maybe, who knows, maybe we can partner up after this one's done and do a Mother's Wanted documentary or something like that. But yeah, there's a lot going on in America. And I think most of our problems are because, I think we've lost faith, but I think we've lost faith because fathers aren't doing their responsibility in raising their children to know, love, and serve the Lord, which is our duty as Christians.
I agree. My dad was a Marine, and on the outside, I think he looked scary, had the haircut. And even though, like, he, 5'11" and all that, but my dad has this demeanor that even at his age now, he scares my husband. Like that's he loves, like, I'm like, my dad's a teddy bear, but I firmly believe that if a man harmed a hair on my head, he'd happily go to jail. And knowing that my whole life, like, just knowing that I wasn't going to get away with stuff, and the boys were afraid to, like, call my house until I was 16. And, that's
a good dad right there.
Wonderful. It's wonderful now. I hated it when I was a teenager. I hated it. It was like, oh my gosh, you're so lame. And, boys call and he tells them he's going to run him over with his truck. And I'm like, how can you do that, Dad? Like, that they're going to believe you. But it's such a blessing. And I knew, I just didn't have trouble as a teenager with boys because I had a dad protecting me. It wasn't perfect. It's not that I didn't, like, go through normal things that a girl does as a teenager, but I was isolated by a loving mom, who's Puerto Rican mom, who was probably as scary as my dad in different ways, but they just put this protective bubble around us. Yes. And it's the same thing that I have tried very hard to do for my children. And again, not perfect. It's not like you can prevent life from happening to your kids, but when you raise your child the way they should go when they are old, they will not depart from it. And those words from Proverbs are true. They are true. And a dad has an energy, a mom has an energy, and you need both. It's the yin and yang, it's the force, if you like Star Wars.
Yes. No, we complement each other, right? And I think that part of how we got here is that feminist lie. Well, it was like, which feminist lie? Well, there's so many of them. But the feminist lie that men and women are interchangeable. We aren't. And that's what makes women special. That's what makes men special, is that we're different and we complement each other. But more importantly, when we complement each other, that means that we need each other. Yes. Right? Our worldview is so much more holistic. It's so much healthier. It's so much more based on us all needing each other and depending on each other. The left likes to think that we're all our own island. They'll talk a good game on building up communities, but all their communities that they build up hate each other. Right? Yeah. The LGBT movement, if you ever talk to a gay person or a lesbian or a bisexual person, they all hate each other. Right? First of all, in the early days of the 60s and 70s, like, the lesbians were at war with the gays were at war with the lesbians. No one liked trans because they thought that was totally crazy. And even talk to people today. First of all, the ads on women's sports and gender transitions for minors, that came from a gay friend of mine. An absolute gay friend of mine who's a wonderful guy, total conservative. He was saying, why are you talking about all this stuff over here? You should focus on the men and girls sports. It's the giving kids sex change procedures, stupid. That's literally what he said to me. And it's exactly right. But their communities are fake. They're bogus. And
my biggest allies have been Gays Against Groomers in the state of Wisconsin. All over. Like my friends, Jesse, Jamie, Sasha, they've come to school board meetings, they've held signs, they've talked, they've come to testify, they've helped hold rallies. They do not like that. They'll say not in my name, that the gay lesbian movement has been basically just taken over by trans, because it's, like gender sexuality alliance clubs, the GSA clubs that are in K through 12 schools. They used to be gay straight alliance clubs. And that has been changed now because it's all about gender identity, transgenderism, the thousands of different identities that kids can have. It's like being gay just isn't like, it's not sexy enough anymore. You have to be trans, you have to be a furry, you have to identify as like a tree or a rock, which is a true thing. It's called, there's either fursona and there's rock pronouns. The neo pronouns. And so you can
neo pronouns,
neo pronouns. That's what it is. So that's a real thing. But talking real quick, I wanted to go the decline of families, declining birth rates. Elon Musk talks about this all the time. Now, with Moms for Liberty, we have theorized that when you teach children that the planet is on the brink of destruction, and that Western civilization and humanity, in particular, the white man, has been the most destructive force to all living beings. And then you have CRT, SEL, CSE, all of these, critical theories in schools. They dominate education from kindergarten to medical school. This anti-human, anti-family, that children are like a virus. Children should be avoided. And if you must have one, just have one. And that's it. It's just... It's like have dogs instead. They'd rather you have dogs or anything. If you ever seen people pushing around dogs in a stroller, I have in cities. In Philadelphia, I've seen it, and you're about to go, oh, look at the baby. It's like, oh, it's a dog. Oh my God. So what's happening? It's really having an effect, isn't it? This messaging.
Yeah, look, I did some man on the street interviews the other day for this documentary, and just talking to normal people in the city. And climate change came up so much, like carbon footprints. And by the way, I'm with you on the treating dogs like children and treating the dogs like babies. I think that's terribly crazy, but I do love dogs. I mean, I
I love
really
dogs
do.
too.
But dogs are for families. Dogs are for
Yes.
people. They're not. They aren't people. You aren't a fur parent. You know, like there's no such thing as a fur baby. Like you're just a hyper obsessed person. You know, that's like wanting a child. You should have a
Yeah.
baby. You should get married first, obviously. But Scar, I'll tell you. I think that so there's this old article, I think it's 1978, 1979. It was in the New York Times. I can send it to you off air. It was a New York Times reporter embedded herself in the Soviet Union. She was doing a profile comparing Soviet women versus American women. And when she went over there, she basically said to the Soviet women, uh, hey, so American women, they stay at home and they don't have to work. Their husband actually makes enough money to pay for all the bills. They have vacation homes. They've got a boat. They've got 2 cars. They've got, you know, a lot of wealth. What do you have to say to that? Well, in the Soviet Union, men and women were forced into work. Women couldn't stay at home and be stay-at-home moms. They didn't have that option or that luxury. And actually, children weren't allowed to be with their parents after the age of 3. So moms could stay home up until the age of 3. Then they had to go into state mandated daycare, and you couldn't have aunts or uncles or elderly parent or grandparent take care of them. And the Soviet women said, oh my gosh, well, don't those women in America want to contribute to their economy? Don't they want to contribute to their country? And that was the narrative. That was the mindset then. And you fast forward from the 1970s until today, and ask the average American woman what they think.
Yeah.
Right. And the reality is that the feminist narrative that women were second-class citizens is a total lie, right? For so many reasons. First of all, women, yeah, they didn't go into the workforce, but they didn't stay home. You know what they did? They ran the PTA.
Yes.
They ran the school boards. They ran the local civic communities. They ran the local communities that had the most impact on our lives, right? That's what women did. They actually had so much power, so much influence. And I had this revelation a few years ago. So I'm the eldest of an eldest of an eldest. So when I was born, my great grandmother was only 60, and I was very close with her. She's one of the strongest women ever. There was no fooling her. There was no like manipulating her or tricking her or disobeying her even, right? If you went against what grandma said, she was the matriarch of our family.
Yeah.
She had so much power and influence. And that goes for Grandpa Chuck too. That was her husband. He didn't cross her either. And so she passed away a few years ago, and I was thinking about her legacy with our family as the matriarch. And it hit me that the whole feminist narrative that women were second-class citizens, that women never had power up until the 1960s when they had the right to kill their babies, right? It was all a lie. And it was a lie, everything about it. Killing your baby is not empowerment. It's actually corporate America and the state taking advantage of you and controlling you, sterilizing yourself. No other civilization in the history of the world would have viewed sterilizing yourself with vasectomies or tubals or putting off having your own family as empowerment. They would look at us as crazy. And actually, Christ, as he fell, I think the second or third time, when the women of Jerusalem go to him and greet him, crying and weeping, he says what? He says, women of Jerusalem, weep not for me, for a time is coming where they will say, blessed are the barren, the wombs that never bore, the breasts that never nursed, right? That was crazy to them.
Yes.
Because who would reject motherhood? Motherhood's the most empowering thing. You're literally forming the next generation of human beings that are going to go on to change and serve the world. But this whole feminist lie has caused so much damage. So I think if I could blame anything for the lack of family formation, lack of children, I would first and foremost blame feminism. And then I would blame men. I think that men, what is toxic masculinity? Well, toxic masculinity isn't masculinity at all, right? The definition of masculinity is healthy. Masculinity is good. It's not Andrew Tate, right? It's not a sex trafficker. It's not someone that makes money by exploiting women. Masculinity, true masculinity, the pinnacle of masculinity is becoming the patriarchal grandfather who everyone loves. You've passed on enough love to your children that they went on to have their own families, and they give you children as a reward because of the love that you shared. It's multiplied over and over again. Yeah. So the first step, how I view it is this, Scarlett, is The first step in growing in masculinity is becoming a husband and being a good one. The next step is becoming a father and then becoming a grandfather. And then maybe the pinnacle is actually becoming the great-great-grandfather, the ultimate in patriarchs. But it's just, I think it's men rejecting their masculinity and becoming husbands and fathers. And I think it's women embracing this feminist lie that to the point where they'd rather go make Jeff Bezos billions of more dollars by serving him and Amazon rather than serving their children, their family, their local community. It's insane. We've lost the plot.
I mean, didn't we see you and I were on a Dr. Phil show where
it was so rough.
It was rough. Where this topic was discussed. And it was, what was the name? The
Child free by choice.
Child free by choice. Yes. And that this whole movement. And what was really weird about it is it's not just that adults that say, I don't, I don't want to have kids, but what we saw, they were putting out TikToks that not only we don't want to have kids, but they were doing these TikTok social media videos where they're like, I'm going to Disney World without my kids. Look at how great. And I'm going to Costco and buying all of these cupcakes and without kids. And isn't that great? But they were doing all of these things that you would normally do with kids. Cause I don't know who is going to Disney World and like going to Costco on the weekends and like getting tons of junk food. Just all the things they were doing that I'm like, I'm on a boat and I don't have my kids. It's like, I have kids. I go on boats. Okay. I have 5 kids and my husband and I took trips. We had babysitters. We had family watch them. We still did things alone, but honestly, we had amazing family vacations. And sometimes when my husband and I go on vacation alone, after 2 days, I'm like, I miss the kids.
Yes.
We're here. And now that my kids are getting older, they are my favorite people to be around. I mean, raise kids that they can't be your best friend when they're teenagers. Can't have that happen. They're going to hate you. They're going to say you're ruining my life about 20 times a day. And that means you're a good parent. But now my daughter, who is 23, calls me about 5 times a day. And my oldest son, I talk to several times a day. Raise kids that you love hanging out with. I love hanging out with my kids. The older they get, they're like, they're my friends now that they're old enough. And they're the greatest blessing in my life. And so we went on Dr. Phil basically saying, having kids is awesome. These are like, and it was a little weird.
It was so weird. And I'll tell you why it was weird. Well, a lot of reasons, right? Like, I think first and foremost, the original guests that they were going to have to counter our arguments were a lot crazier than the people that they ended up bringing on, right? The people that they originally had on, I looked them up and they had advocated for like child-free zones all over America. It's like, well, those already exist. They're called bars. They're called casinos. They're called most places where children aren't welcome today. But they were really radical. They were anti-children, and they swapped them out for this affable, likable couple who had this argument that was so fake. It was so like insincere, which is, well, this was the right choice for us. And we decided not to have children. Well, first of all, you unpack the story and you find out actually it was the choice that the woman made after getting married. The husband always wanted children, and then she eventually said, I don't want children. And rather than doing what you probably should do in that situation, which is get an annulment, because marriage is for children, marriage is for family. It's not to lock down another human being for the rest of your life and rest of their life. That's kind of controlling, I think. But it was just so sad because that was obviously an emasculated man, right? If I had gotten married to my wife and she told me 5 years in that she wasn't going to have any kids with me, well, I'm going to go find a wife to actually have a family with, right? But it's so lost. And it was so dishonest because, well, if it's just your choice for you, then why are you evangelizing? Why are you trying to show other people that this is a better life? You have.
That was my problem. You're selling this to me. Right. I was like, you're adults that don't want to have children. Okay, like I'm not going to make you have children. My goal wasn't to like, but you not these people. They were older. There was the one woman that was like loved her cats and stuff, but it was that they were selling it as like, this is better. This is better than having kids. And it to me was this very, I mean, who better would want this than, like I said, Amazon or like corporate America? Yeah, consume like you have children, but don't have them. Like, because then you can stay in the workforce. Because I'm telling you, you have kids. Someone is going to have to work less. Someone will, because you can't afford the kind of, like, unless you are, unless you're a billionaire, you can't afford the kind of wraparound childcare that you'll need. Someone is going to have to take some time off, or maybe both, or at different times. Like, you can have it all, you just can't have it all at once. You have kids, somebody has to agree to, like, I'm going to be like the caregiver, or I'm going to step back from work and be there for the kids and pick them up, because kids get sick. There's summer, school doesn't go all day, and it shouldn't. And I think it's already too long of a school day for kids. I mean, there's
way too long.
The way that we do school in America, like, is just off. But and they had me on the show, Moms for Liberty, because we love being moms. We think motherhood is empowering. It is. And the left hates us because of that. They know how powerful women that are going to fight this sort of woke femininity that is not feminine at all. That this rejection of our children, rejection of anything traditional, that marriage is just, that marriage is like a curse, and having children is just the worst thing that could ever happen to you. It's just all wrong. It's all backwards and sad. And, I just wanted to say, hey, I love my kids. It's pretty great. I got pounded pretty hard.
They were they were so unfair. And, the reality is that they're missing out, right? They're obviously unhappy. I don't go around. I mean, I guess I do now, but I do like to showcase my kids. It's kind of bragging a bit. I'm very proud of them. I think they're all, very fun, interesting kids. They're all so different, but these people, you're missing out even on cleaning up the messes. Right? Because you're serving others, right? When you have children, it's kind of like God forcing you to grow. I don't really think you can grow up or mature properly until you've had to take care of someone else. And that can be a parent, an elderly parent, a child, an aunt, an uncle, anyone that needs your help. You really aren't a fully formed human being until you've had to serve others in a very intimate way, right? And then, one thing that was interesting is on this one of the Man in the Street videos or interviews that I did as part of this documentary, I asked a girl, she was a dog walker, and I asked her, 40% of Gen Zers say they're not going to get married, 43% say they're never going to have kids. Where do you fall? Oh, well, my long-term partner and I have decided we're going to get married in the next few years, but when it comes to kids, like, no way. We've decided that our carbon footprints are just too big and things are just too crazy right now. But before that, she said something really beautiful. She said that she and her partner had been putting money away for her elderly mother to take care of her in her old age. And I thought that was so cool, right? Like, you have the whole cycle of life thing. Your mom takes care of you, then you take care of her, and the cycle keeps going. But I totally flustered her when I asked, well, that's so beautiful that you're doing that for your mom, but who's going to do that for you?
Yeah.
And she had no answer. Oh, well, we're just going to put more money. Yeah, but you're missing the point. Forget the money. Who is going to actually do that? Like, who are you going to pay to do that? Because if we don't repopulate, you have a whole, like, is long-term senior care going to be the largest industry in America? Is that really how America is going to grow and get into the next, century? Is that really greatness? No, of course not. That is stuff for nuns. That is stuff for religious orders to take care of the elderly and dying, right? That's stuff that should be done as charitable. But we've created these industries. We've created this, illiberal and anti-human mindset where people, even good people, right? Because that's a good person. If you're
Yeah.
saying that you're going to take care of your mom, that you're taking your hard-earned money, your blood, sweat, and tears that you're putting away to take care of her, you're obviously a good person. But you've been fooled by this culture that tells you you can have it all, right, at
Yeah.
the same time, just not
Well,
kids.
Well, okay, and you're a good person if you're in a classroom and told repeatedly that if you have a child, that child has this carbon footprint and it's going to lead to, planet Earth literally imploding, and that you are the greenhouse gases, and that you're killing, you're starving people, and it's going to be horrific. So if you are an empathetic person, and I think probably some people that would make tremendous parents because they're very empathetic are being brainwashed to believe that if they give in to their instinct to have children, that's selfish. Having children selfish.
That's right. We're the
Having
selfish
children,
ones.
it is the least selfish thing. It is the most, oh my gosh, it is the most humbling thing. Because if you think you're all that, just have a kid. By the time they're 16, you will be every day pounded.
Well, do you remember when Dr. Phil promoted his last book or whatever, like the 21 reasons not to have children? And it was like, you don't have a children to have a mini-me. Like, I don't know a single parent that has a child to have a mini-me. There was other ones like, right. I don't want a mini-me.
They do, but you're older by then. By the time it's like that commercial. What's the, they're like, we try and help people, prevent them from turning into their parents.
Yes. Oh yeah. Is it Allstate? It's one of the insurance nationwide, maybe.
But my daughter, I'm a grandmother. I have an almost 2-year-old, and she calls me every day, and she's like, "Oh my God, I catch myself," and I'm like, "I sound just like you." But she's like, but now that when she had a child, and she's like, everything became clear to me, and she had one young, so it's earlier than normal. That and I will say, I am so proud that I had a daughter who kept her baby, got married, and they are happy. He's in the Air Force. He's deployed right now. She's finishing nursing school, and they are great parents. They're younger, but they're great parents. And my grandson is a blessing. So you can, maybe that wasn't the plan what happened, but God had a different plan, and they did everything right. They got married, they kept their baby. He's beautiful, he's wonderful. And that baby actually helped get their lives on track. Like they got it together, knowing we have another, and now they want to have they're like, we want 3 more kids at least. So,
Scarlett, I'll tell you, I'm Catholic. I think you are too. My mom just taught me just to take whatever babies God sends your way. Right. And because one thing that she told me when I was a kid was you have to be open to new human life, because let's say you're contracepting. Well, that might have been the only time where you could have had a kid. Right. You have to leave these questions to God. Otherwise, you'll get to your deathbed and you'll think, oh, my gosh, I could have had more kids. Or what if we could have had this kid? Well, we've just taken the natural, Catholic way of doing things. And we just take whatever we let God determine who lives and who dies. Right. And I can't say no, because if we believe that he's truly the author of all life, then who are we to prevent a baby from being born?
How many kids do you have?
We're up to 7 now.
You're lucky. I have 5. I wish I would add more.
I don't judge anyone. I like some people, again, I don't even judge people that get abortions, right? Unless you do it 17 or 18 times. I think that a lot of people have taken in these lies from the elites in our society, right? They're told it's not really a baby. Oh, don't have a baby now, have it later. I don't judge people because there's so many lies out there. And if you're not grounded in this very strong faith, I was blessed with very strong parents who felt they had very hardcore Catholic beliefs.
Yeah, the old school. My dad. My dad came from a smaller family, but my husband, he's the youngest of 6, and his mom is the oldest of 11. and her mom like had, I think, 13 kids. I mean, like big Catholic family. Okay.
Yeah.
So like these are big, huge families. And now, now it's like to have 2 kids. It's like people like I might, and I'm not going to push anything on anyone, but I mean, it's just, I also think that I think economically, there's just a whole host of reasons why we're seeing a decline in birth, and why people aren't having kids or having as many kids now. But I think if we could just have an overall pro-human message, starting in kindergarten, and another thing that I think that even conservatives, when they look at the curriculum and what's happening in schools and even in daycares and the messaging that surrounds kids, I think they might be worried that, okay, where are my parental rights? Like, you're in Colorado, you'll be arrested for misgendering your own child. So is that going to, are you going to really want to have kids? I think that's why we have to fight this stuff, because it's going to cause people to think, I don't even know, I'm conservative, I'm a Christian, but what happens? I have this kid, and then it's like my heart is outside of my body, but the government ultimately has control over my child so that's why I think it's really important for groups like ours to fight, because otherwise, even on our side, even conservatives are going to be reluctant to have kids, thinking the state is too powerful, and I don't want to raise a child that's going to end up some servant of the state or something like that.
No, I think that's exactly right. And I think, part of what my wife and I are trying to do is serve as good examples of, basically, if we could do 7 kids, anyone can. You just gotta, and by the way, it gets easier after the third, right? Like the third is the toughest, because you are officially from man to man now to zone defense, and you gotta but once you get to the 4th and 5th, first of all, like, what's the difference between 4 and 5 kids? Then 5 and 6, but the eldest becomes of an age where they can actually help.
They can be very helpful.
And we've got a built-in babysitter now. We've got built-in cleaners, and you got to reward them. You got to have like the incentives and the punishments. It's like running a business, and you're actually, so now where we're at is I'm teaching my children management skills. So the older ones, now they're in charge of getting the basement clean, for example. Well, they can utilize, the other kids, but overall they're in charge, and we're not going to have Dadder Day on Saturday and do fun things unless that basement gets clean. And so now they delegate, and now they're learning how to properly manage people. You can't come down too hard. You can't beat up your brother because he won't sleep and pick up the pillows. You got to be a good leader. So you're teaching them leadership. You're teaching them management. This is what you learn in a family, right? There are all these benefits from being raised in a big family. First of all, you learn how to put up with people that you really can't stand, people that annoy the hell out of you. You have to put up with them and tolerate them. You learn true tolerance.
Yes.
You learn diversity, how other people can have different mindsets and different skills and dispositions, and how they can fit in part of the empathy. Oh my gosh. You learn, if you do it right, you get rid of jealousy, right? Because in a big family, not everyone can get equal things.
Yeah.
Because the parents don't have all the money, and the aunts and uncles can only get the kid one thing, or get certain kids certain things. So you teach your children to be happy for other people when they get something that they didn't get, right? Oh, I'm so my
bored,
kids,
and they're
never bored.
It's like, they always have playmates. They can always do something. I mean, kids, when with my youngest, sometimes like you have to arrange play dates and all that. It's great to have a big family, because then you don't have to always do all that, and they always have each other. And as they grow up, my brothers and sister are the people that I rely on so much in my family. Blood calls to blood. Like, your family will be, my dad used to always tell us, like, when we were fighting, he'd be like, your family, they're the ones that will always be there for you. And instead, and the message you get from the woke is, oh no, discard your family, get a glitter family instead, who only
Go no
affirms.
contact. No
Yeah.
contact. You know that one?
Oh, no
So
contact at all.
that's when you cut your family off entirely. You don't take their call. You change your phone number. You change where you live.
Yeah.
You don't have any more contact with your mom, your dad, your siblings, like the people that know you the best, that love you the most, that would
Yep.
like die for you. Go no contact and go to this new online trans community where you
Yes.
never even meet up in person. It's totally disordered.
It's
The devil
promoted
inverts
in
everything.
schools too. It's promoted in schools through Glenson, GLSEN, the acronym, through the Human Rights Campaign. They have chat groups, online chat groups, even for younger kids. And there aren't methods to protect against predation by adults. So people can pretend to be, and I think they allow up to like 21. So people can pretend to be kids and they're not, and they open our kids up to all this predation, and then they come in and say, oh, run away from your parents. In Colorado, Tina Deskovich, the co-founder and executive director of Moms for Liberty, she just had a town hall a couple weeks ago in Colorado where HB 251312 was just signed into law by the governor, and it's horrendous. It's the worst legislation passed in the country. And a mom there, I was crying. A mom said how her autistic middle school daughter started to believe she was non-binary and then trans because of what was happening in schools with gender ideology during SEL lessons, the whole drill, the part of the curriculum. And a math teacher in particular, she'd gotten close to, who she ran the GSA club. And she eventually ran away from home and now lives with the teacher.
That's insane. That's insane.
Who's married to a trans person.
Scarlett, the thing is, this country was founded, like we had a revolution because the Brits put taxes on our stamps and our tea, right? What do you think would have happened if they took our children from us to trans them and sterilize them and mutilate them? The thing is, we have, like, I'm political, I am peaceful, I want things done legally and through all the proper channels. But if we don't stop this stuff now, the next generation that's suffering from us, the ones that were mutilated and sterilized and had all this stuff robbed from them, they're not going to be so peaceful. They're going to be miserable. And I don't even know what that type of revolution wants. These radical leftists really are trying to foment some type of revolution. You see it with Antifa. We saw it with the Summer of Love with BLM. They want violence. They want civil unrest. And this is why we have to stop them. Because they will run amok.
Parents, kids that leave their families, leave their churches. It's a cult. It's a cult. Only a cult operates this way. A cult tries to rip you from your parents. They take you from your family. They rip you from the community, and then they put you in this other environment, and then you're never allowed. It makes sense that you can have no contact because that's what cults do. Cults make sure you can never talk to anyone who could ground you back to, like, who really loves you and could take you away from the whole like cult tribe. It's really sick. It's really happening. And, I think a lot of people still think, even though we'll talk about this and we'll show them things, that it's not happening. And it really is. And we've been at events at Heritage and all over the country where we're talking to detransitioners. You just talked to our friend, January Littlejohn, on your show, your new show, which you can plug, the Terry Schilling show, and my good friend January and her story, which ended happily, but it took years what her family had to go through, and now she is such an amazing advocate. But so why don't you talk a little bit about what you guys discussed on your show and your new show before we close out?
Yeah, well, January came on. I've known January since I first was getting involved in the fight to protect children from the transgender industry, and her stories always blow me away. The school transed her daughter, started transing the kids socially in the school, and then brought the parents in on the
And she's
back
a
end.
therapist. So she's a
Yeah.
therapist. So this can even happen to a professional, but
Yeah. Well, basically, the government, the local school system was totally weaponized against her. And she had to fight like tooth and nail, like a mama bear, right?
yeah.
She's a perfect example of what a mom's supposed to be. And she fought back to win her daughter over. Her daughter detrans. She didn't go through any of the medical stuff or anything,
Yeah.
but she
She
detransitioned
desisted.
socially. But yeah, look, the big takeaway I had from January is that, I often thought of her before we spoke as like a evangelist for all the parents who are having to deal with their children transitioning and possibly losing custody, to give them faith and show them a game plan. But my takeaway after talking with her, we talked for like an hour or so, maybe it's longer than that. Uh, my takeaway then was actually, no, she's for parents like me. She's for parents that aren't suffering from this, that aren't dealing with this with their children, so that they can get ahead of this stuff, because it's a lot easier to prevent it from happening than to stop it from happening and to go
Yeah.
backwards. And I mean, you got to check it out. It's the Terry Schilling Show. Very easy to remember. But I have a bunch of other episodes too, but it's really fast. I'm just having candid conversations. And Scarlett, you should come on, because you've got your own story about Wisconsin and the fights you've had there. We could talk. I mean, we've already talked for an hour, but that hasn't been about what your work has been. We should definitely get you on. But I'm having conversations with like my favorite people, interesting people that have something to share.
That's exactly. We just want to have conversations with people, my favorite people, the people that I've met along the way that are making such and we'll do this again, and I'll have like videos prepared and stuff, because one of the videos that the American Principles Project did about books was when we shared everywhere during the 2022 election season, and we were like, darn it, I wish we had this in Wisconsin, like, because we want to show people what's happening, and we think that will inspire them to vote. And we want to get our conservative candidates to talking about these issues, the culture war issues. I mean, listen, you tell someone, I am fully on board with voter ID. However, you're not going to get sort of a non-traditional voter say, hey, you got to vote because this candidate is against voter ID. They're not going to get out of their comfort zone. Tell them what they're doing to the children. Tell them that they are removing their genitals. Tell them that they are confusing autistic kids. Tell them about that they're telling kids to leave their parents and go live in their house, and make them realize that could be my kid, that could be my niece, that could be my granddaughter, and they will run and take 10 people with them when they go vote, because now it's personal. And that's what we're trying to do, is to take, you think it's personal because you're a dad. It's personal for me because I'm a mom. There, but for the grace of God, go I. I can't even imagine the hurt and the pain and suffering of your child being alive, but dead to you. Like they are walking and they don't want to see you. And then they're going by a different name. It makes me want to cry just thinking about it. So like, I'm fighting for this because it's horrific for the children. And as a parent, if I can prevent this from happening to at least one family, I'm going to try.
Well, you guys are doing it. And I'll tell you, Scarlett, every time I'm asked, I bring you guys up all the time. Like, this whole anti-transgender industry movement, it wouldn't have gone anywhere without the moms. Like, it was all of you guys flooding the zone in those school board meetings, holding up those books, reading from them, getting shut down and muted because the content was so offensive that they couldn't actually air it in the meeting.
Oh, yes.
I get asked about you guys by donors that we meet with, and I'm always singing your praises because of how impactful the work that you guys do. This country owes you a debt of gratitude for what you've done. President Trump would not be president without the moms, right? All the moms for Liberty saved this country, period, right? It doesn't go anywhere because, my big frustration is it's so tough to get dads involved. It's tough to get them engaged. Like, They don't want to deal with it. Like they just don't want to deal with it. But when you get the dads engaged, that's where it gets really interesting. That's where there's like some fear of God into these people that are thinking, oh, we're really screwing up when we got dads here taking time off of work to come to this school board meeting. So I don't know. I love what you guys do. It's a real inspiration for me.
On that note, real fast, I do have something to play because I think if you haven't seen it, you will really like it. So I'm going to share my screen to a dad that has gone viral recently, and for good reason.
They were shocked. But what's crazy is that I haven't heard nothing since. I didn't get a response from our superintendent. I'm going to
start from the beginning.
Father of a third grader at Las Estrellas Elementary. Miss Director, I had emailed you. I had emailed the principal, the assistant principal, and the school social worker. My son, 2 weeks ago, was exposed to a group of, let's say, gay men having sex on the iPad. And how my son came about it was he forgot his laptop at home, and your teacher lent my son his personal iPad. Well, when my son was doing a project with some of the other kids in the classroom, all of a sudden they closed out a tab. There was a bunch of naked men sitting right there in front of my son. And then all the other kids that had seen this, hey, they were shocked. But what's crazy is that I haven't heard nothing since. I didn't get a response from our superintendent. I had a meeting with your guys' assistant superintendent, your guys' assistant principal, but nobody had the decency to make my son important enough to show up to that meeting in the morning to tell me why he was able to be exposed to this type of material. Now, I've heard about the situation that happened at your guys' high school, at North High School, with the teacher that was involved with sexually explicit material as well. To me, I don't care what team you bat for, but you guys got to quit putting all this stuff in front of these kids, all this sexual material, regardless if it's a flag or if it's them actually seeing the content on an electronic device that is in school. Now, I came to you guys last time arguing about security factors with the students about how they were roaming around. Now, dude, you guys literally I was told that you guys weren't going to inform the other parents in this classroom. Like, you guys will tell us if a student gets lice, if a student gets COVID, if he gets the flu, but you guys will not tell all the parents in the classroom that their kids were exposed to sexual explicit material. And I think that's weird. It's weird because how can you send out a text message about all these other things, but you can't tell parents that their kids were exposed to this? Now, my son, one of 6 kids.
Please finish your comment.
My son, one of 6 kids, was the only one to speak up about this and the only one to make it known. So now I ask y'all, what are y'all planning to do about this? How are y'all going to protect these children and hide this material from them? Because it's everywhere in this world right now, especially here. You guys got to protect these kids. And if y'all, as parents, students, and everything,
thank you for your time, sir.
If you guys want to see a difference, start looking at their paychecks. Y'all want change? Look at their paychecks. That's how you guys.
Man,
that was awesome, right? Like what? Like
yeah. I just hate Scarlett. I hate the shutting down the parents, asking like, why aren't they addressing that parent directly? Why aren't they saying we will have our lawyers reach out to you to get you an answer? Like, it's please finish up your comments. You're done. Like, who the hell are these people? Like the guy had
story. Please finish up your comments. I would be like, I want more information. I cannot believe this happened. I don't care what the rule. Like, talk more. I want to hear more. Now, please finish up. Oh my gosh.
And
he didn't show up for a meeting. A meeting was arranged, and he's like, you all didn't even care enough about my son to show up to the meeting that we had arranged. They left him high and dry. And he, and his kid's in 3rd grade. In 3rd grade.
And why is a 3rd grade teacher having pornography on his work computer? Right? That's a grounds for termination.
And the fact that the kids saw that, there should have been police there. That's a violation of state law. I mean, that teacher should have been arrested. That was a violation. These kids were abused. Just viewing that content like that was abuse. And that was there for a long time. Those kids now are going to suffer from trauma.
Never get that out of your head. I think that children are a special thing, right? And I think that people that work with children should have to go through extra steps, right? There should be a higher standard for the people that work with children than there are for cops or, professional athletes or chefs or, construction workers. I just think there should be a higher standard. I don't think you should be allowed to watch porn if you're a teacher. If you work in schools with children, when I was growing up, you weren't allowed to watch porn because it was a perversion, right? It says that you weren't in control entirely of your sexual desires and your sexual nature. That's what this is. I mean, this is totally crazy. People like this should not be in schools. I'm sorry. Like,
be watching it
their
in
costs.
School, clearly, that this teacher was
on a work computer
in school on a work computer, and then wasn't careful enough and handed it off to a kid, even if it was an accident. Too bad. Like, I
don't think it was an accident.
I don't think it was. But even by the law, doesn't matter if it was an accident. It still happened, and you still have to suffer the consequences of it, which the very least being fired, but I think charged and made an example of would, but instead, I'm sure this teacher doesn't lose their job. It gets swept under the rug. No one listens until the parents. Now, what changes that? The parent talking, this going viral, this lives of TikTok, Moms for Liberty, all of us. This is sunshine is the best disinfectant. So even in blue states, he's from Minnesota, they're making this so that they can't sweep it under the rug. That's what we do. We go in and expose this, and then they're forced to deal with it. And then that teacher is out of a job, even though they didn't want to do it. It happens because the pressure is too great, and too many normal parents and people that don't pay attention are wait, that's messed up. Like, that's bad. You wake up the normies and things change.
I think you're right. A very wise man, I was asking him why, like, what do we do? How do we stop this? And he was like, well, I don't know exactly everything we do, but I can tell you the first thing we have to do. We have to speak out about it. We have to put words to it. And he said, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and it was made flesh and dwelt among us. That is how this stuff changes. And he brought up how the ancient Jews actually believed that words were so powerful that once they left your lips, they actually became something entirely of themselves, that they went on to impact. Like, it wasn't just a noise you made. It was a new creation, the words that left your lips. So I think you're exactly right. We need to speak out about it. We need to expose it. The more you say this stuff, the more people get exposed to it and see it and hear it. It's familiar, and they know it's happening. And the more we speak out about it, the less the left can get away with saying things like, it's not happening. But it's great that it is.
Yes, it is. Yes. So that's what it's almost, it's 9:00. We could talk for so much
hours, days, probably.
But you have your 7 children, and you now, do you homeschool, or do they go to a private school, public school?
They go to a local Catholic school. My wife and I tried the homeschooling thing, and we just couldn't make it work. But I fully support homeschooling, and I think we need to give those homeschooling families a lot more help and support. But yeah, my heart goes out to them. They go to a really good Catholic school now.
My kids as well have gone. I the only homeschooling I've done was over COVID, and they did not like mommy school, because mommy school was really hard.
Really hard.
I don't want mommy school anymore, because I'm like, that paper is not good. Like, and now we've done they'd give us, like, pathetic. The kids would be done in an hour. I'm like, well, mommy school's starting now. So and they were like, no, mommy school. But I have very good Catholic schools in my area, conservative, and we've got some good choice Lutheran schools. They know who I am too so and I have a daughter in a public high school, and I have been advocating for so long that they know who my daughter is and they know who I am, and things aren't going to happen. You know why? Because I'm vocal, I speak out, and I develop relationships. I'm not always hair on fire. Most of the work that we do is behind the scenes. Most of the work is relationship building. Most of the work you don't even see, because lots of times there are teachers and principals and superintendents we work with that like us, but they have to do so in secret because of what the left has done and what the media will do if they find out that they, oh my gosh, actually like someone from Moms for Liberty because they're not actually a literal,
Right.
fascist. I'm with you. There are still really good schools and really good Catholic schools, and I'm hoping that there's still some good Catholic colleges out there for my younger daughters, as I've been told. Because finding a good
Franciscan
college,
University is fantastic. Franciscan University is the best. I will always advocate. There's other good ones, but I love Franciscan.
Yeah, Villanova. Well, yeah, I mean, because college is my big concern, so I can navigate. We've found, good elementary, middle, high schools. College is like, that makes me nervous. So got to keep fighting. But Terry, it was so great to have you on, and we will talk again. I'm sure I'll see you in DC in the not too distant future.
Yes.
And keep doing the great work that you're doing, and we're following you and support you. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, Scarlett. Have a great night.
And everyone, and I had your follow Terry there.
I saw it. No, I saw it. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye, everyone. Have a good night. I have to go tuck my own kids into bed. Bye.
Bye.